All right, well, welcome everyone. I don't want to wait too long to get us started because we have a lot to cover tonight and a lot of fun things to chat about. But I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this part of our CHCI's recruitment sessions that we're doing. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on internships versus fellowships and talking a little bit about the difference between the two and how you might be able to make a decision between doing an internship or doing a fellowship or doing both potentially with different organizations. My name is Marie Cho. I am Vice President of Programs at CHCI. I've been at the organization for 10 years now. It's been a while. I work with all of our programs that we do at CHCI, and I'm excited to hopefully get to hear from some of the folks on this call tonight and hopefully meet some of you in some of our programs in the future. So let's get started. So tonight, as I mentioned, we're going to do some little bit of conversation about the difference between an internship and a fellowship, talk to you a little bit about some different opportunities to come to DC with CHCI. And then we have some fantastic alumni of CHCI programs. We have a former intern, a former graduate fellow, and a current fellow who's a former intern with CHCI to talk a little bit about their experiences and their kind of take on the difference between internships and fellowships. So should be a great conversation. To get started, just out of curiosity, I love a good poll. So would love to see, there we go. If you can quickly share what your academic standing is, if you're a current undergrad student, a current grad student, recent graduate of either your bachelor's program or a master's or JD program or something else. I'm gonna quickly throw that in there. Awesome, so it looks like mostly undergrads or a couple of recent graduates from undergrad and a couple of grad students. So excellent. Well, we've got opportunities for everybody that we can talk about here. So it will be great. Oh, there we go. Now you can see what those results were, just so everyone knows who's on the call tonight. All right. So really quickly, a little bit of history of CHCI. I love this picture. It's nice and retro and old school. CHCI has been around since 1978, and we were founded by 3 Latino members of Congress who really wanted to see better representation, not just on Capitol Hill and in elected office, but in the staff who work for elected officials in state government and local government and federal agencies here in DC. So we were created to really help create opportunities for young Latinos to get the experience and the connections to make those kinds of positions possible. This is, I believe, our very first class of fellows. And I used to make jokes about their outfits, but now I realize that I'm pretty sure they're all back in style again. So no comments there. Everything comes back. Today, we now have 4 real signature programs. We have our, Congressional Internships for current undergraduate students. We have fellowships for folks who have recently completed either their undergraduate degree or their graduate degree, as well as a high school leadership program, which we won't really talk very much about today, but certainly if you got a brother, a sister, a cousin, a niece, a nephew who might be interested, there's definitely opportunities for high school students as well. We now have over 4,000 alumni all across the world, working in every sector possible. If you follow our social media, you probably saw that we had a bunch of folks either elected or re-elected to office, which was really exciting. So alumni do it all over the place doing really amazing things. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between an internship and fellowship. And to start, I thought it would be good to kind of set some context about why you should even do this in the first place. So some really great reasons. Hopefully, if you're here tonight, it's because you want to do one of these programs, but just to really frame it, it's a really fantastic opportunity, whether you do an internship or a fellowship, to test drive a career. Find out if it's a thing that you actually want to do. It gives you a really great taste of what a particular job or a particular career area is like. You might love it, you might hate it, but I always love to tell folks it's way better to find out you hate doing a thing as an intern or a fellow when there's an end date to your program than it is to relocate your life for a job that you end up not liking. So it's a great way to do that test drive. It's a really fantastic way to get new skills and to learn what life is like working in different kinds of industries and sectors and just being in an office in general. College life and professional life are very different. You can ask all of my fellows who are very sad about working 9 to 5 instead of having that all over the place schedule right now. So it gives you a really great way to adjust to that office culture and just learn the basics that are kind of universal in most office situations. And usually the skills that you learn in an internship and fellowship can really be applied to any other position, any other career path that you want to take. When employers are hiring, they're often looking for recent interns and fellows, folks who have recently been with them. So, it's a really great place for folks to find great talent, right? People love to hire from within. They don't have to retrain people. They don't have to do all that extra work. In fact, just a couple of years ago, there was a study that said that employers actually offered full-time jobs to 56% of their interns. So it doesn't always happen, but it is certainly a nice way to get in the door for some organizations. Fourth reason, it's a great way to connect classroom theory with real life experiences. There's a huge emphasis, you'll see a lot of articles and research and data about this, that employers are always saying that colleges and universities need to place more emphasis on how you actually apply what you're in the classroom into the real world and into a job. And so this is a great way for you to start kind of flexing those muscles and taking what you've learned at school and really applying it in the real world. And then last but not least, building a network, especially for anyone who's interested in coming to DC. Networks are everything. It is the number one thing that's going to help get you connected, help get you a job, help find you opportunities. So most opportunities to do an internship or fellowship will come with lots of networking opportunities, lots of ways to meet new people and make some connections that can help you on whatever that next step is going to be. So which one is the right one for you? And it could be that both of them are the right thing for you to do at different times, but let's talk about them. So internships and fellowships, very similar. They're both short-term, paid or unpaid practical work experience. The usual difference is that internships tend to run for a semester, whereas fellowships tend to last longer than a semester. So some of them might be 6 months, 9 months, a whole year. Some are 2 years. So it really just depends on the program, but they tend to be a longer experience. And in a little bit more detail, internships generally provide educational credit, exposure, a great way for you to, all the things that we talked about before, right? All those benefits of learning on the job and getting that networking. They're a great way to try out your career if you're not 100% sure. A lot of larger organizations, be they corporate or nonprofit or government, will have structured internship programs that'll provide you great opportunities to learn more about how an organization works, meet with different leadership of the organization, or potentially even leaders in the industry or fields, and not just within that organization. And often will give you a chance to try a lot of different stuff within various departments or role functions within the organization. Smaller organizations might have that, they might not. A lot of smaller nonprofits, since that's the world that I've mostly been in for most of my career, will often just throw you right in and hope that you can figure it out because they don't have the resources to have those more robust programs. But it really just depends on the organization. And I think as you're researching opportunities, it's always good to see, is there a formal program or is this just, I need someone to do a job? It's always a great thing to look into. You're more likely in an internship to do more administrative level work. It really varies by the program, by the organization that you're interning with, where you are, how in-depth the workload is. But typically, a big difference between internships and fellowships is that an internship isn't really going to expect that you have that much experience coming into it. So certainly to be a competitive applicant, they're going to expect that you've got some leadership roles and some good coursework, but at the same time, they're not expecting that you can walk in and do their job instantly, right? Like they're going to expect that you're just getting started in this sort of office setting, which is kind of a big difference here when we talk about fellowships. Fellowships can vary widely. They can be anything from programs for recent college grads all the way up to programs for senior leaders or academics, people taking a sabbatical from being a tenured professor, right? So I'm sure you've probably seen things that are talking about fellows and you look at the profiles and they're all like, 30 years of experience. And it's like totally different than say our fellowship program, which you can do directly out of college. So fellowships really vary greatly. However, for all of them, the focus is still on learning and developing new skills, but usually in a more in-depth way, right? So you're going to really dive into the work a little bit deeper. They still great ways to do all the things we talk about, trying out a career, trying out an industry, getting great network, getting good hands-on experience. All those things are still applicable. I think, again, a key difference here is that it's still a great opportunity to learn, but most fellowships are going to expect that you've got some kind of training, some kind of previous experience, perhaps an area of expertise that's unique to you, or to a specific program that you did, right? You had a specific major, or especially for folks who have a graduate degree, that they've have a specific area of focus. So they're going to expect that you're coming in with some of that experience already, that you're coming in with that expertise, and that you're kind of like ready to go. So very frequently that means you're given staff level work like right out of the gate. So not earning your way into it, as interns often do, but a lot of the times it's just like, here you go do it. And the other big difference is that, whereas some internships are part-time, some internships are full-time, fellowships are almost always full-time. So those are some of the general differences, and a little quick side-by-side just for reference. Like we said, both an internship and fellowship are going to provide great hands-on work experience, great exposure to a particular field or industry. They may be paid, they might be unpaid. They might include additional benefits ranging from, benefits that we think of as associated with a job, like transportation funds or scholarship money or housing, or they might include benefits that are more on the learning side of things. So mentorship, training programs, things like that. And again, typically an internship is for folks who are, internships can be for folks who are in undergrad, graduate school, or, definitely lots of folks who do an internship as one of their first jobs after they graduate to really get their foot in the door into a particular industry or organization. But fellowships tend to be reserved for folks who have already completed some kind of degree. And like I said, they can range from folks who are fresh out of college to senior level administrators who are taking a sabbatical from their current job. So it really just depends. Some great places to find both, obviously, other than ours, which we'll talk about here in a second. We have a couple sister organizations. We call ourselves the Tri-Caucus because we're each affiliated with a congressional caucus on the Hill. APACS and CBCF are our two Tri-Caucus groups that we work with, and they both have fellowship programs available. Idealist is a great place to look for internships and fellowships. Intern Match is a great website. Internships.com has a ton of internships, and ProFellow has all those different kinds of fellowships that you can think of, from your postdoctoral fellowships to more job-based fellowships. So lots and lots of different resources. And again, I mentioned this before, but feel free if you've got questions as we're going through this to throw any questions you have into the question and answer section or throw it in the chat. Either way, happy to answer those as we go through. Mostly, I'm sure you want to hear from our panelists, so I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but I have to do my sales pitch first. So obviously, we have really fantastic internship and fellowship programs at CHCI that we're really proud of and really put a lot of work and effort into. So just making sure we highlight those. Our Congressional Internship Program is for current undergrads, but also open to folks who've recently graduated. So right now, I know our summer application deadline is coming up in just 2 weeks. Taking time away from myself here. Our application deadline is coming up in 2 weeks for the summer. And so if you are graduating this spring, you are still eligible to apply for the summer internship, or you can do it while you are still in school, either way. Our fall and spring programs are 12 weeks long. Our summer program is 10 weeks long because there's a shorter congressional session. Congress is in recess for the month of August, so not much to do around here during that time. We offer weekly leadership and public policy training. So we bring everybody in for an orientation week, and then once a week or twice a week, as we've been doing it in our virtual world, we provide a graduate level course with the George Washington University Trachtenberg School of Public Policy and the Cisneros Hispanic Leadership Institute at GW. Lots of acronyms. So we provide public policy training as well as leadership development training, fantastic guest speakers, networking, all sorts of good stuff. And then 4 days a week, you work for a member of Congress. So we'll work and get you placed into a member office. The benefits are all listed here. Housing's provided, stipend, health insurance with all premiums covered by CHCI, all that good stuff. So we'll make sure you're taken well care of. And yes, as Sasha reminds me, the summer deadline is December 1st and the fall deadline is February 15th. And then, and I'll share at the end all of our deadlines that are coming up for all of our programs. Yes, all of our programs are paid. Everything we do is paid. So our internship program is definitely paid. And then we have our public policy and graduate fellowship program. So this is a longer program. It is 9 months long for recent graduates. Public policy fellows are folks who have recently finished undergrad, are within 3 years. So for 2021, that would be 2018. And graduate fellows have to have completed their master's or JD within the past 2 years. So it's a really fantastic sort of entry-level career program opportunity that's 9 months long, a little bit more in depth than the interns, with the opportunity of not just being on Capitol Hill, but also splitting that placement in half. So doing half on the Hill and half at a government agency or a nonprofit or a think tank. Lots of different options there. But we also have some fellows who will do their whole 9 months on the Hill. Just like the internship program, we have a week-long orientation before everybody gets started, and then we do weekly professional development and leadership training, lots of work on writing, policy writing in particular, bringing in different leaders and folks to come in and chat with our fellows. All the payment information for fellows is available on our website. Because housing is not provided, we do pay our fellows more. The pay rate for fellows is very much equivalent to an entry-level Capitol Hill salary. In addition to that, we provide health insurance, all premiums covered by CHCI, round-trip transportation to DC, and a metro stipend to support local transportation costs. Yeah, I see all the questions flying in. So I know Pam's going to be answering some of those in the chat, and we will see, she can flag for me if there's any that we're going to answer with the whole group. So with that, actually, before just to really quickly, thanks, Pam. So one question that did come through that I know our panelists are not going to be able to answer very quickly. Someone asked, how different are the current and upcoming summer internships going to be due to COVID-19? We have not made an official call. We are suspecting, based on the way that cases are dramatically rising right now, that we will be virtual for the summer, but we're not making that official call just yet. We are hopeful that maybe things are going to turn around and we'll be ready the second it sounds like it's going to be safe to bring folks back to DC to make that change. But as of now, folks should really consider that most likely we will be virtual for the summer. What's different about that? We are still able to place our interns and our fellows. Our fellows are actually virtual right now as well. All of them are currently working remotely, just as many folks are doing right now. So they are in their placements. They're just doing them like this, right? On a Zoom call, on their computer, from their laptop elsewhere. And then we do our programming. Instead of doing a whole day of programming, we typically do like all day on a Monday for interns or all day on a Friday for fellows. We actually break it up into smaller chunks because sitting on a Zoom call for an entire day is a lot. So we break it into smaller sessions that we hold throughout the week. So those are the big differences. But in some ways, it's actually been fantastic because we've been able to get some speakers to come through who don't live in DC or are usually kind of restricted to the DC folks. So there's been some perks to it, to that, but definitely a different experience, but we're doing everything we can to replicate what it's like to be here as much as we possibly can in the virtual world. And it looks like Pam has answered the rest. So, and if there's no other questions about the programs and all of that, then we can go ahead and get started with our panel. So we have a fantastic panel joining us tonight. They are all former CHI participants, our fabulous alumni. And you guys want to feel free to unhide yourselves now. So joining us this evening, we have Claudia Pagan Marchena, who was a spring 2018 congressional intern who was placed in the office of Senator Amy Klobuchar, former presidential candidate Amy Klobuchar, and is currently a legislative aide for Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I was like, hold the fangirling moment here for everybody. I know. We have with us David Valdez. David has a unique experience in that he was a spring 2019 congressional intern and is currently our CHCI API Public Policy Fellow. So he's getting both sides of this experience. Was previously placed in the office of Representative Al Green when he was on the Hill as an intern, and is now currently placed at the American Petroleum Institute, moving to the Hill in January. And then we have Allison Perez, who was last year's Graduate Nutritional Health Fellow and did her whole 9 months with the office of Representative Kim Schreier out of Washington, and is currently a child nutrition policy analyst at the Food Research and Action Center. So a nice range of folks, and I'd never do the full bio introduction because I always think people tell their own story better themselves. So if you want to do some very quick introductions, and then we'll jump into our questions. So Claudia, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Like Marie mentioned, I was a spring 2018 CHCI intern, and I was placed in the office of Senator Amy Klobuchar. After that, I was hired onto her team, and I eventually found my way to my current position. Really excited to be here with you guys. I am originally from Miami, have been in Washington, D.C. for the last 2 years now, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks. David.
Hey everyone, so my name is David Valdez. I was the spring 2019 Congressional Intern, placed with the Office of Representative Al Green. I'm originally from Houston, Texas, but I'm currently living in New York City because I recently graduated from Columbia University this past May, and I'm currently placed at the American Petroleum Institute with their Federal Relations team and their Climate Policy team, working as a public policy fellow.
Awesome, thanks. Allison.
Buenas noches, everybody. My name is Allison Perez. I'm very appreciative of everybody for taking the time to be here and for watching the NVA draft that is happening right now. I am originally from Miami, Florida, so hey, Miami love. But I went to high school in North Carolina, and now I'm living in DC and working at the Food Research and Action Center after finishing my fellowship in May with CHCI. I was as Marie said, I was the Nutritional Health Graduate Fellow working on federal nutrition policy with the federal nutrition programs, namely SNAP or food stamps, in addition to WIC, or the Special Nutrition Assistance Program for women, infants, and children. And now in my current role, I'm working mostly in child nutrition policy with the school and out of school time programs. So National School Lunch Program, school breakfast program, after school nutrition program, summer nutrition, and now with the new PEBT program. So happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that you guys have about my experience in the fellowship and beyond.
Awesome, thank you. So I think since the focus of tonight is really trying to differentiate, right, what's the difference between these two different experiences as an intern or a fellow, if you could each tell us a little bit about your program experience and the kinds of assignments and work that you were given. And I don't know if anybody wants to, I feel like Allison started to talk about this a little bit. So I don't know, Allison, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I guess what I'll say is that the fellowship really went, especially when you're working on the Hill. I did a 9-month placement in the House of Representatives with a freshman Democrat from Washington State. And so what was really interesting about that experience is that I was learning how to do all of the things in terms of policy, just as the office was also learning how to do all of the things. And so what was a really unique experience about that, and especially working in the House, is that you get to, sure, as a nutrition fellow, I was working on a lot of nutrition related issues, but I also worked on a lot of other different issues. And as on the House side, especially, offices tend not to be as well staffed as on the Senate side. So you get thrown into whatever project and whatever issues that they have available and that they need two hands working on. So I did As I said, I was working on SNAP and WIC related issues. My boss was working on the Agriculture Committee and the Education and Labor Committee. So anything related to those committees, whether it was agricultural commodities and the trade policy with China, to sustainability and plastics research, to higher education policy, and anything in between, anything and everything in between. So the fellowship really gives you an opportunity to get your hands dirty, working on a variety of policy issues, whether it's related to the thing that you were directly given your fellowship to do or not, and also to learn the ropes of how the committees work and how hearings work, and how to prep your boss for hearings and committee work and things like that. So it's a very mixed bag, and it's a very great learning experience.
Thanks. I don't know, maybe we'll switch now the other end, internships. Claudia, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so the internship is a little different. You are expected to do everything from answering phones to giving tours of the Capitol to sorting through mail. Those are more of the administrative tasks that offices need help with, that interns are usually given. There is an opportunity to work on more substantive policy. I remember when I was an intern in Senator Klobuchar's office, I had the chance to edit some of her floor speeches, also comb through some of the appropriations bills, and get back to the legislative assistant that was in charge of that specific portfolio with recommendations. And so like Allison said, it is a mixed bag, but I would say that if you are applying for the internship, you should expect that there will be quite a bit of administrative work involved. That said, I think if you hustle and if you build relationships with legislative staffers, they will gladly give you more work to do, especially work that aligns with your specific interests or your major or whatever policy field you're most interested in. I remember I was very explicit about wanting to work on banking issues and financial services, which is what I currently do for the Congresswoman. And so that took a little bit of hustling, but yeah, you get a little bit of everything.
Great, and we'll come back to that hustle talk for sure. David, since you've done both, talk about your experiences as well.
Yeah, so I think I can echo both Allison and Claudia's experience on the internship and on the fellowship side. So my summer placement with the internship at the Office of Representative Al Green was very much a mixed bag. I came in hoping to just kind of so I guess a little bit more background. I did my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, and so coming into the internship my junior summer, I did not know much about like the legislative processes that went into like doing policy work and doing stuff like that. It was just kind of like an experience for me to introduce myself into this space. So I kind of didn't have any expectations coming into the internship, which was, I think, helpful on my end because I did not know what I was getting myself into. But I enjoyed the experience completely. Like Claudia said, like you do a lot of the administrative work around the office. At least for me, that was like my main work for like the first few weeks, kind of like to build their trust, show that you can like do the work, get there, be the first one into the office, be one of the last ones out, be available for any kind of work that's given, whether that's like reorganizing the snack pile that they have, or like refilling like the printer paper. That was like my day-to-day for a lot of the beginning of the internship. But like as time went on, you kind of start to gain their trust. You show that you're a hard worker. You offer yourself up for like if there's someone that needs someone to go to a hearing or a briefing and like take notes, write up a memo, offer yourself up. I went in with the hope of learning more of like energy and environmental policy. Started going into meetings and briefings about like the USMCA, the economic policy stuff, like immigration moratoriums, cybersecurity stuff that like I had no idea, but it was very exciting to be in that space, I think. and just being offering yourself up to do that kind of work kind of like helped out, like Claudia said, to like gain their trust. And then also, I did get to work on a little bit of the stuff that I did have interest in, and I did have the time to go to those briefings and those hearings that interested me. So yeah, that was my experience as an intern. And what I got basically from that internship was the introduction into the policy world, and more specifically like working on Capitol Hill. And what I didn't get from the internship was more of like a specialized position, a specialized kind of like role where I could focus solely on like energy, clean energy technology, and environmental policy work. So that's what inspired me to apply for the fellowship after graduating past May. And I've been enjoying it ever since. I mean, I'm sure I can talk more about it after it's done, but I've enjoyed the work I've been doing. I've been doing a lot more like focused work with the American Petroleum Institute, working on like both clean energy technology, environmental policy regulations, going to a bunch of meetings, and being at API, I think, is also different from Allison's position on the Hill, because I'm technically working off the Hill. So it's not as much. I think one of the advantages of working off the Hill is that in companies like API, you have like, I think, a lot more freedom to kind of like move around, and specifically in the virtual world. I've had the opportunity to meet with a bunch of people that I probably would have never met with. Like I met with like the CEO of API, the COO, the CFO, all the COs and Os. So it's been an interesting ride, to say the least, for the fellowship, but I'm sure I can talk more about specifics later on.
Great, thanks. Well, all of you mentioned hustle, so even though it's technically not on the questions here, I do want to ask, and I guess it kind of ties into a little bit of the things we're talking about. DC is known for hustle, right? And so I definitely think that the Hill is the kind of place, and we say this a lot in our programs, that it's the kind of place where hard work is rewarded with better projects, and where if you're too good for a project, then you're probably too good for the better assignment then too. They just won't pass it on to you. So I think that it's definitely been a pretty universal experience for our program participants, that the harder you hustle, the more likely you are to get those really exciting and interesting projects and assignments. So let's see here. Tell us a little bit about, each of you obviously applied to a specific program. Why did you decide to apply to either the internship or the fellowship, or both? Anybody want to jump in first?
I can go first. So I applied for the internship because I needed the flexibility that it offered in terms of it starting in the spring semester. Because it was my graduating semester, I wanted to do it here in Washington, D.C. because I wanted to get a job here. I was very clear on what my objective was, and I couldn't commit to a fall start in the way the public policy the fellows had to. And so that flexibility really sold me on the program. I think looking back and the career trajectory that I've taken, maybe the public policy would have been a little more tailored to what I wanted to do. But I do think that flexibility enabled me to participate in CHCI. And so that was one of the big reasons why I went for the internship as opposed to the public policy fellowship.
Anybody else? And we actually have, there's a fair amount of folks who actually do the spring internship exactly for that reason. We call them the one-way ticket interns, because their total intention is to not go home when it's over, but to have that job lined up. And there's quite a few like Claudia who do that each year. So anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, so I think my experience is a little bit different from Claudia. So I kind of went in not really knowing what I wanted from the experience, which was beneficial, but also I was at a disadvantage because kind of like figuring it out on the way left me unprepared for a lot of like the networking events and a lot of like the kind of like that mentality of, connecting with people, keeping in touch with them, stuff like that. That wasn't really in my head during the internship. I was kind of just trying to find my footing. So applying to the internship for me was just kind of like an introductory role into like policy and just trying to get a better sense of like the different aspects of the energy space. And then applying for the fellowship, obviously I talked a little bit about it, was for to kind of get a better grasp of like the specifics of energy and environmental policy. So yeah.
And then for me, I think what drove me to apply for the fellowship was that as I had graduated from my master's program, and it was kind of a niche program with a very weird title that I'm going to have to be explaining for the rest of my life every time I have a job interview, which hopefully won't be anytime soon. But I studied, it was called a Master in Gastronomy and World Food Cultures and Mobility. Which sounds like there's a lot of cooking involved, but mostly it was like social sciences and policy related to food. And so I knew that I had gotten a really good education, but I knew that it was going to be perhaps more difficult than somebody with like a name brand master's degree to pitch myself in the policy world in DC, which is what I wanted to be doing in food and nutrition policy. So I didn't have any real hands-on experience in policy making or working in politics. So I saw this fellowship as a really good opportunity to, one, give myself a really good credential to put on my resume, and also to gain more policy experience and hands-on experience in DC and in Congress, so that whatever I ended up doing next, I could take it with me and apply it.
Great. And I do remember the first time we looked at your application and we're like, this is an interesting degree program, but we put it together. It worked out. All right, so a little bit of a fun question that I think the team came up with. What's your favorite memory of your time as an intern or a fellow? Any highlights to share? Anybody want to jump in?
I can start, and it has to do with your boss, Claudia, and also to do with Donna Shalala, who unfortunately just lost re-election in Miami. But last fall, the Congresswoman invited me to go to a dinner with her at the Library of Congress, which is at the Library of Congress holds a month in normal times pre-COVID, would hold a monthly dinner for members of Congress. Where they all come and they listen to a notable author talk about their book, and then they get to ask questions and things like that. And they are allowed one guest, and I was lucky enough to be invited by my boss. And I remember just being there waiting. My boss was off at a meetings, and she had asked me to save us seats. So I got there early, and I saw AOC and grabbing a drink, and I made sure to know what she ordered so that I could order it too. And then when I was one of the first people to pick a seat, and then when we eventually sat down and got to the table, I saw that I had just happened to choose a seat that was right next to Donna Shalala, who, if people who don't know, she was a former Secretary of Health and Human Services under the Clinton administration, and then was also president of the University of Miami, and then served and is currently serving in the House of Representatives representing Miami. And so I was a little starstruck to meet my hometown congresswoman. So that was a really good memory.
She's also my hometown congresswoman, so we must be from the same neighborhood or area. Yeah, I would say my favorite memory was, so if you are selected for the internship, and I'm not sure how it'll work out with COVID, and but when I did it, you get taken to like a one-day retreat, and you do a ropes course, and you get to like know your cohort and the people that you're going to be with for the entire semester. And it was an incredible experience, so much fun, a bunch of trust building exercises. And It was great. I think I got really lucky and had an amazing cohort, and I keep in touch with so many of them, and some of them are my closest friends till this day. My roommate, we met through CHCI, and so that's probably up there for me.
Yeah, I think similar to Claudia, like one of the best things about the internship, I guess also like pre-COVID times, was just having that that little like group, the like family with you, kind of like going through this journey. And I can remember one specific time when during the summer we were having like blackouts at the towers in Howard where we were staying. And oh, that was a mess. I'm sure that was for the on the administrative side. But I remember we were having we just all got together in one room and we just started cooking like random food. Random food. We started like making like paper airplanes and throwing them out of the windows, and I just remember that being like one of the most like wholesome experiences like with the group. And like Claudia said, like this, some of the people that like are my best friends to this day, and like I talk to like on the like regularly about like day-to-day life or like work and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, I will acknowledge that in this virtual world, you know, we don't get to go to the ropes course. There's no private dinners at the Library of Congress. But it has been really interesting that we've been able to get some folks, like I said, people who have very busy schedules. And I think David even mentioned some of the people in his placement who probably in the real world in person, you'd never really get a chance to meet, but because it's like, oh, for 20 minutes, hop on this Zoom call, we're able to bring in a much broader range of folks. So there's been some perks. There's been some perks. We're trying to, you know, make the most of this virtual world that we're all in. All right, one question that I do want to acknowledge that was in the Q&A before we move to the next question for the panel. Someone asked, do you have to be Latinx or Hispanic in order to apply for our programs? You do not. Our programs are open to anyone, but they are very much focused on the Latino experience, on Latino leadership, on bringing in leaders from the Latino community. And so as long as you're down to spend 10 weeks to 9 months having those conversations and digging into all that, then we're definitely, you're more than welcome to apply and come join us. All right, so moving on to the next question for the panel. All right, we did that. 2 more questions, and then certainly if anybody else has questions for the panel, please drop them in. If a prospective applicant were to ask you which program they should apply to, and I know from experience that they've probably already found you on LinkedIn in one way or another, because they always do, what would you tell them? Would you encourage them to apply the internship program, the fellowship program, hold out for that master's degree and be a graduate fellow? Would you have any advice to share? Anybody want to?
I don't think I'm the best to answer this question since I applied for both, but I'd say it depends on like where you're at in your life. So I think like for me, when I applied to the internship is what I needed at that moment. I didn't like, if I would have like not had that experience and then applied for the fellowship later on, I think I would have had less of a understanding or like a grounding that I needed from the internship to like have that confidence in myself that to say like I can do the work, you know, on Capitol Hill or off the Hill in these spaces. And I think that's kind of like what did it for me. But like, again, if you're someone who's like outgoing, you know what you're gonna do, you know what area of policy you want to work in, you know you want to be in DC after, then you know there's obviously like the fellowship, and then like doing the internship like your senior spring, and then you know going to work right after. But yeah.
I would say that I think to echo what David said, it really depends on what your objectives are post-program. I think the first question you should ask yourself is what you want to get out of the program. If it's the case that you want to come to DC and network and, you know, expand your horizons and be exposed to, you know, incredible people and briefings and the works of Capitol Hill, then I think that the internship program is sufficient. If you want to, though, dive deeper into policy, be around longer, The 9 months really gives you that cushion to build those relationships that could, translate into a job post-fellowship. And so I think it really depends on what your personal agenda is, where you are in your academic track, if you're going to be graduating soon, if you're not. And so I would, just say that you should weigh those factors. But I think in general, you should apply because it is an incredible program that I think everyone will agree has opened doors for us and exposed us to an incredible world that I don't think I would have been able to participate in, frankly, because CHCI does a great job of providing you with all the resources that you need to get here, to stay here, to meet people. And that said, there's a huge alumni network in Washington, D.C. that has done CHCI, and I found that it's a lot easier to connect with people when you have something in common, and CHCI is often that thing, so apply.
And I just want to echo that too, and because it's draft night and basketball is on my mind, I'll just say that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I actually applied to the internship when I was in college and I didn't get it. And then after I graduated from grad school, I didn't realize that there was a graduate fellowship. I just thought it was the PPF fellowship. And then when I found out that there was a graduate fellowship, I was like, well, I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? It's an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible, whether you're there for 9 weeks or 9 months, it's an incredible opportunity that's going to change your life. And then again, take David's example, and you can do the internship and eventually end up going and doing a fellowship. You can do both. So whether you're thinking about an internship or a fellowship, just apply, do it. It's really like submitting an application is no skin off of your nose, and then it really, again, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Whether it's for the fellowships, the PPF fellowship or the graduate fellowship, I would say if you know that you want to get a master's degree after your undergrad, or you've already applied to master's programs, and know that that's what you want to do, then maybe like wait it out and apply for the graduate fellowships. There is definitely a difference between the type of work that you get as a public policy fellow and a graduate fellow. I think it's graduate fellows, given that they tend to be a little bit older and have a little bit more experience under their belt, I think from the get-go, there's a little bit more trust perhaps in your placement. Although a lot of the work that you end up doing is mostly the same. But it's really just your call. I would really encourage everybody to apply, like David and Claudia said.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on what Allison was saying, if you look on our website, you'll see that in the public policy fellowship space, there's not we do have a STEM application and a regular application, because we do have some slots that are specifically reserved for folks in STEM majors, and it just kind of helps us put the two in different buckets. But if you look at the graduate fellowship positions, they are very specific, and that is because folks who are looking for a graduate fellow to be placed in their office are usually looking for somebody who has some subject matter expertise in a particular area. So they aren't really usually expecting it from a public policy fellow, because undergrad usually, for most things outside of our STEM folks, isn't enough to be an expert, right? And I'm not my opinion, the opinions of our placements, but when folks have a master's degree, like a master's in public health or a master's degree in education, they've really gone in deep, right? And so those are the offices that are just oh, you're the expert on this, you're in charge, go do the thing, which happens a lot more with our graduate fellows than our public policy fellows. A couple of questions are coming in here. And I actually might be able to answer this without the panel, but I'll just throw it in because I think it probably only applies to Allison. But was anyone stuck between applying to two different fellowships? If so, did you apply to both, or did you decide on just one fellowship to apply to? I think that was probably just Allison who had the chance to apply to more than one. Did you? I can't remember if you did or not.
I can't remember whether I did or not. I think I might have applied to just the regular graduate fellowship and the nutritional health graduate fellowship, just because I was like, hey, I mean, let's find out, like we'll see what happens. I was definitely Given my academic background, I was certainly more drawn to the nutritional health fellowship, and I think that probably showed in my application. But I think it just depends on what your background is in and what your interests are, and if something is, if you're really drawn to and interested into fellowships, go ahead and apply. I mean, it's more for Marie to read, but she likes to read, so it's all good.
I got nothing else to do, right? No, that I would say from our end on the side of folks who are selecting, right? Definitely encourage folks to apply to more than one in the graduate fellowship space. If you apply to the STEM Public Policy Fellowship, we're going to consider you for the regular fellowship either way. And I think we say that in the application. But on the graduate side, if there's a couple different areas that interest you, and I know we have a lot of folks who come through who've done, say, a master's in public policy or a master's in public administration. So they've got some really great policy skills, but they're very broad. They'll apply to a couple different ones and just kind of show the knowledge that they have in those areas. And because mostly what you're applying to in that sense is that's what you're going to focus on during your fellowship. That's what the kind of work that we're going to look for placements where you're going to do that kind of work. We're going to have you work on assignments that are related to that kind of work. And so that's sort of the difference there. So hopefully that answers Arturo's question. One more question. This is from Jorge. How did the internship or fellowship give you a better sense of what you wanted to do next? And for David specifically, do you have a better sense that you would want to work in government, or would you continue working for a company? So I think you can, David specifically about the Hill versus off the Hill, but if, you know, any thoughts?
I think for me, so to answer the first question, I think the role the internship played for me was, again, me coming with the STEM background. I never really saw myself working within that space. It was more of just an opportunity for me to understand the inner mechanisms of making legislation in the energy sphere and the environmental space. And that was something that always interested me, kind of getting a more complete picture of these technical places that you kind of only study in books and in classes, but you never really understand how it's apply it in government, or how the societal impacts that these policies have. So that was kind of my intro for me. And then the fellowship gave me, well, I guess I haven't completed the fellowship yet, but applying for the fellowship, I think I had a better sense of what I wanted to do in terms of being in these spaces. What specific role I'm aiming for, I still do not know. But being within this kind of a bridge between the technical and the political, socio-political side is kind of a good mix for me right now. I think working with API has been a great experience. Working with their the federal relations team, I've had a lot of experiences. I've gotten a lot of experience with stakeholder relations and lobbying, which is something I never really thought about either. Which has been great. I don't necessarily see myself in those spaces, but definitely kind of existing somewhere between the creation of policy and the technical area. So which is why I'm like going back for, well, I'm currently applying for graduate programs that kind of have both the technical and the political aspect of being within like the energy environmental space.
So this just reminded me of something that I wanted to say in response to the previous question. But if you're thinking about applying for the public policy fellowship and you think you might want to go to grad school, the fellowship is a really good opportunity to get really good experience doing something for 9 months while you're applying to grad school. And I know several of the people in my cohort and previous cohorts that use that opportunity. But specifically answering this question, I did an entire 9-month placement in the House of Representatives, and there are some people that do half of their fellowship in Congress and half of their fellowship either at an advocacy organization or a federal agency or what have you. And I think something that was really valuable about working 9 months on the Hill and getting all of that experience is that it it helped prepare me for if I wanted to get a job on the Hill after the fellowship, or if I wanted to move to the advocacy space, which is what I ended up doing, and what I do now. I'm working as an advocate, working to advocating for policies at the federal level to Congress, and also I talk a lot with USDA, so with the federal agencies, but I'm also interfacing a lot with state and local government and state and local advocates on the ground. So those are parts of the political process that I saw in my office, because I would meet with a lot of state advocates on behalf of the congresswomen, mostly constituents, talking about a variety of issues that are important to them. But that gave me a window into seeing, like, like there are more ways than one to have an influence on policy and what bills get passed and what hearings happen, other than just working as a staffer on the Hill. And you can do a lot on the Hill, and it's a really great experience, and I really valued my experience. But it's also not the only way to make a difference. And so I think in the work that working on the Hill showed me that it's not the only option, and there's a lot of other things out there. And I have to say, I really do enjoy working as an advocate, because it allows me to do the Hill facing stuff and the federal agencies facing stuff, but also allows for dialogue with people that are working on the ground. So you get kind of both sides of the action, to say, so to speak.
Claudia, did it give you a good sense of what you wanted to do next? I feel like it did, because you're still here.
Yes. So when I came to DC, I thought I studied economics. And so I thought I was going to end up at a think tank working on, just economics. But doors opened. I had, I had really good fortune and met lots of women of color in economic policy that mentored me, that opened the door for me, that recommended me for jobs, that have coached me through what it's like to draft a bill, what it's like to staff a member on committee. And so I think this experience gave me a network of people that really invested in me and kind of steered. I was a young, naive person, really just wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, and really excited about being in Washington, D.C. And I'm, grateful that I had those people to kind of help me steer in the direction that I would eventually end up. And now I get to work on policy that I think is really meaningful and satisfying and is challenging. But I would also like to echo what Allison said, that DC is an entire ecosystem, and that the Hill is not the only place where you can make a difference. And that there is just a world of opportunity here. And so I would just reiterate, apply.
Thank you. And I will say, I think the one of the biggest things that I've seen just from years of watching people go through this program, interns and fellows, is that, as everyone said, there's so many things that you can do in DC that aren't just work on the Hill, and you don't really realize what they are until you get here. And then you start realizing that there's all this other stuff, right? Even for our organizer folks, I know we have lots and lots of organizers who are coming through. They'll use it as an opportunity to understand how the federal part of it works, so they can go back to their communities and keep doing what they're doing with a better knowledge of how the system really kind of works on all sides. So lots of great opportunities there. We are at time almost exactly. I think I'll just throw in my final pitch that everybody should definitely apply. I saw some questions going through, and I know that Pam's been answering them. But definitely, whether you think you want to be an intern, you think you want to be a fellow, a graduate fellow, definitely apply, definitely take that chance. I think that there's a lot of great opportunities, and we have plenty of people who become a CHCI participant on their second or third application. So, definitely, and I know Sasha, our college programs manager, is on here, and she'll tell you, if you're interested in the internship program, apply to summer and fall. The applications are both live. I know spring just closed, but and if you're interested in being a graduate fellow and a couple different topic areas are interesting, apply to all of them. We're excited to see what you got. So A couple last things real quick, just to share, speaking of all those programs. Upcoming deadlines that we've got. The spring deadline for the internship passed I think last month, but summer 2021 applications are due December 1st and fall 2021 applications are due February 15th. Feel free to apply to all of them. It's fine. If you're a senior in college and you want to apply to the internship program and the fellowship, also great. Our public policy and graduate fellowship applications are due January 15th. We have a history of doing extensions, but we are ending the extension train. So just know if you're like, I get the emails every year, they just push it back. We're actually not pushing it back this year. So just be prepared for that. And then again, if you got, a cousin, a sibling, whoever, the kid you babysit, anyone who's in, I guess you don't babysit high school kids, never mind. But if you know any high school students, please do encourage them as well to apply to our high school program, our 12 Next Gen. With that, I don't know, any final closing thoughts or, I feel like, we got 2 questions really quickly. Someone asked for some advice on the essay portion of the application. The one thing I will say as someone who reads all of these is try to be yourself. Try to let us know who you are, what you are interested in, what you're passionate about, what you bring to the table. I think we very often will get essays from folks who just assume that, oh, they're a Latino organization, I should write something about immigration, even though immigration isn't the thing that gets them out of bed every single morning, right? So we'll see a lot of essays that seem like they're just trying to be what we want. CHCI does not do policy work. We do not have any opinions or stances on anything. That's not what we do. We aren't here to influence policy. We're here to make policy influencers. So be yourself. Let us know what you're really passionate about. Let us know what drives you and what motivates you. And that's going to be your best possible essay. But yes, for our final bit, closing thoughts, any last bits of advice or pieces of wisdom other than to apply for anyone who's on the call tonight from the panel? Anybody?
After you apply, and if you are selected, I would say maximize the experience to the greatest extent possible. I know that with COVID, we're living in a virtual world, and so things are a little bit different, but reach out to people. CHCI does such a great job of giving you the tools to step out of your comfort zone. And you'll soon realize that asking to someone for coffee to talk, in some sort of informational interview is something that will become second nature. Maximize that, develop relationships. I cannot stress enough how I am where I am today because I put in the work and people took an interest in me and invested in my personal career track. And I keep those relationships alive. And so maximize this experience, use it to grow, to learn. It's a wonderful program.
I just want to echo that. I think it's really important to, no matter who you meet and who you come in contact with in DC, you never know who's going to make an impact on you and your future career. And I don't say this to be opportunistic, but everyone you meet is could make a difference. And it's really important to make a good impression on the people that you meet, and to be genuine and be yourself about who you are and what you're looking for, and develop connections with people, because you really never know. I mean, I can honestly say I have the job that I have because of networking opportunities that presented themselves as a result of this fellowship last year. And at the same time, also, on the other hand, DC is a very small town. As our beloved Dennis, the CHCI staffer, likes to say, that "Cheese my train is never late." So you have to, it's really important to make a good impression, because like I said, you never know who could be calling the shots one day, whether it's a lowly intern or a chief of staff. You really never know. So just be yourself, be kind and gracious, and try to make connections as much as you can with people.
Yeah, and I think that's For me, that's kind of one of the reasons why I came back to CHCI for the fellowship. Not just all the tools and like the opportunities that they give you to connect with these people, to, you know, be in the rooms where, you know, legislation is talked about or people are at, you know, like wherever you want to be. But I think more than anything, the CHCI familia that is formed, like with your cohort, with you know, past cohorts, with your, you know, the programs manager, you know, those kind of relationships are the things that like I feel like have made my experiences with CHCI one very unique, and like some of the most important people in my life have been through these experiences. So I think you lose nothing with applying for CHCI, and you definitely gain so much more by you know, going through one of these programs, whether it be the internship or the fellowship or the R2O program. But I think with that, if there are any other questions that weren't answered in the Q&A or more specific stuff like on essays, you know, feel free to like reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm sure the other panelists, you know, wouldn't mind like a quick message on LinkedIn, you know, connect with us, talk to us.
Absolutely.
Yes, feel free to reach out.
Definitely that's why I made that joke earlier, because everyone knows when the applications are open, because everybody with the CHCI alumni on their LinkedIn starts getting messages and hearing from folks. So yeah, definitely do that. Well, with that, thank you to our awesome panelists. Thanks for taking the time tonight. Thanks for everyone else who logged in and joined. If for those of you who are considering the fellowship, we are doing an additional webinar on December 16th, focused specifically on our fellowship programs. And if you think that the internship program might be a better match and you want more information, we actually did a webinar previously that you can find a recording of on the CHCI website anytime you want to. And you can also, probably within about 24 to 48 hours, you'll be able to find a recording of this session as well. So our email address that is there at the bottom, programs@chci.org. That's the box that's checked by the entire programs team. So we'll make sure that your question gets answered by the right person. And thank you all again. Hopefully we'll see some of you in our programs very soon. And with that, I will let Allison return to the MBA draft. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.